Hello, everyone, and welcome and good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Leffler, and I work in the Policy Office at the National Science Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you again today to another session of the Spring 2021 NSF Virtual Grants Conference. I'm now pleased to present this session on promoting and protecting the U.S. science and engineering enterprise.
Hello, I'm here to talk to you today about protecting the U.S. science and engineering enterprise. The first and most important aspect, however, is international collaboration. And I want to make sure that I convey to you that international science is encouraged and is critical to the success of the scientific enterprise. We want to make sure that we differentiate between international science collaboration and foreign government interference, which is unfortunately something that we're having to deal with in the basic research enterprise. So international science enables cutting-edge research. It strengthens relationships, both scientifically and through science diplomacy. It leverages resources, including funding, expertise, and facilities. Something very important is how it really trains the next generation of science and technology workforce and enables them to solve global problems. And we want to make sure that we emphasize the importance of international students and scholars in the United States and their amazing contributions to the scientific enterprise as well. But improper foreign government interference is not international collaboration. Improper foreign government interference is when a foreign government or entity attempts to interfere in U.S. affairs. This is often done through certain foreign government talent recruitment programs that disregard intellectual property and threaten to compromise the transparency, openness, and integrity of scientific research. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about these foreign government talent recruitment programs on a further slide. We want to make sure that international collaboration is pursued transparently and with reciprocity, and that mutual benefit is emphasized, and that we identify the complementary skills and facilities and resources that are exchanged through these international collaborations. So international research security is necessary to balance the open environment with the needs of security and to maintain the vibrant science and engineering community that relies on collaborations, both globally and domestically. We want to make sure that we promote the norms and principles of openness, transparency, and reciprocal collaboration. So this is really the basis of how we conduct research and how we conduct science. And as I said before, we need to make sure that these principles are maintained so that the system itself can really thrive and we can keep it as open as possible. So we're committed to the integrity in research, which is the upholding of these principles. The risks that we see when research integrity is violated is we see conflicts of interest and commitment. We see the confidentiality of the merit review process breached, and we see breaches to and leaks of pre-publication data. So we want to make sure that we resolve these conflicts of interest and commitment, and we do that through openness, transparency, and full disclosure. We want to make sure that we know everyone's affiliations and potential conflicts so that we make sure that the confidentiality of the merit review process is maintained. And we also want to make sure that data are protected until the researchers themselves are ready to publish it. At that point, it should be open, but not before. So a conflict of interest is a situation in which an individual or the spouse or dependent children of that individual has a financial interest or a financial relationship that could affect the design, conduct, reporting, or the funding of the research. It is the responsibility of the U.S. organization that is proposing to NSF to make sure that conflicts of interest are resolved. And if a conflict of interest cannot be resolved, that situation is immediately reported to the Office of General Counsel. A conflict of commitment is a situation where an individual accepts or incurs conflicting obligations between or among multiple employers or other entities. So there are often conflicting commitments of time and effort, including obligations to dedicate time in excess of the institutional or funding agency's policies or commitments. Other types of conflicting obligations include obligations to improperly share information with or hold information from an employer or a funding agency. And this can threaten research security and integrity. So we want to make sure that we resolve conflicts of commitment, both through the U.S. institution, knowing all of the commitments of a researcher, and all sources of funding, current and pending research funding support, being disclosed to the funding agency. So what happens when this information is not disclosed to us and often not disclosed to the U.S. institution as well? Here are some examples. In the first example, the principal investigator failed to disclose awards received through an affiliation with a foreign institution. And this was when NSF awards were funded, and there was significant overlap between the awards. In this situation, NSF terminated the NSF award. The second situation is when the principal investigator failed to disclose 2 long-term absences and to provide NSF with information about active employment in another country. Unfortunately, this occurred when the principal investigator was actually working on grants that were very similar to the NSF grants, but in another country, and again, not disclosed to NSF. In this situation, the institution agreed to terminate the award and return the funds. And the last situation is when the principal investigator demonstrated a pattern of lack of disclosure of some foreign affiliations and funding for several years while receiving NSF funding. This person was promoted actually to a high-level position at the U.S. university and still did not disclose to the university or to NSF. However, he did disclose other sources of funding, such as Max Planck Institute funding. The PI in this case was debarred and therefore prevented from receiving federal funding for a period of years. We're concerned very much about these foreign government talent recruitment programs. And these are programs which are state-sponsored attempts to acquire U.S.-funded scientific research through recruitment programs that target scientists in the U.S. So the problem with these programs is that these are not open exchanges of scientific information, and they're sponsored by some foreign governments. They disregard intellectual and other proprietary rights, and they do threaten to compromise the transparency, openness, and integrity of scientific research by holding researchers to contractual commitments that are not known to the U.S. government and are often not known even to their U.S. institutional employer. So here's some examples of some terms from these contracts. And again, this is a contract that was signed by a full-time tenured employee at a U.S. university, but it was signed with the Chinese government. And through this contract, the first author and primary affiliation of the papers that are published during this time frame under the talent recruitment program had to be the Chinese university and not the U.S. university. The researcher should lead the team to obtain overall research funding that equals or exceeds $1.4 million from outside of that Chinese university. So there's a lot of pressure to obtain other sources of funding. The researcher has to develop at least one lead compound that shows promise as a preclinical candidate and achieve a number of patents. So again, a lot of pressure through this contract to obtain patents. The patents do then have to be credited to the Chinese government and to produce this compound. The researcher will hire at least one professor who has won recognition in the National Outstanding Young Scientist Fund program, which is another talent plan, or 2 professors that have or will receive a 1,000 talent program for youth funding, another talent plan. So again, it's hiring professors who are part of talent plans rather than hiring them through true competition and because of their qualifications. And you have to publish and have the quality of the papers be in research areas that are in the top 5 journals among the same disciplines in that country. So a lot of pressure again to publish and acknowledge the Chinese institution first and foremost. We want to make sure that we convey to you the risk of these programs, and we strongly encourage anyone who's considering signing a contract for one of these programs to make sure that they coordinate with their U.S. institutional employer. The information, of course, about the funding and the affiliations also does need to be disclosed to NSF in a proposal. We also work across the U.S. government to ensure the integrity of federally funded research. There's an effort through the Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House, where a research security subcommittee has been formed, and NSF and NIH co-chair that subcommittee along with the Office of Science and Technology Policy. We've also created my position, the Chief of Research Security Strategy and Policy, or the CRISP. And I serve as the central point of contact for research security related issues. I help with policy, I coordinate in the interagency, and I communicate with U.S. institutions and researchers to help everyone understand the importance of upholding these principles of research integrity. We've also worked really hard to make sure that we're as clear as possible in our disclosure policies, in our proposal and awards policy and procedures guide. And we're always trying to improve that language even more, which we give out for public comment, receive comments in, and acknowledge the fact that we need to work together with you in the community to make sure that we all have a good understanding of what needs to be disclosed to us and why. We work closely with the Office of Inspector General on incidents. We want to make sure that we provide information they need that's necessary, and then they communicate to us back on things that they're finding and ways that we can either take action, administrative action, to address behaviors that need to be addressed, or ways that we can improve things on the management side to make sure that we are good overseers of federal funding. We're improving our risk assessment and analysis tools in the agency to make sure that we understand what are the risks. We're trying very hard to better understand what the scale and scope of the issues are in the research security realm. We know that the overwhelming majority of researchers in the community uphold the principles of research integrity. And we just want to make sure that we address any behavior that breaches that. Breaches research integrity principles, and we nip it in the bud as soon as we possibly can. And so we communicate with you all in the scientific community very regularly. And I'm always here to communicate back with you and to answer any questions that you might have. So some key policies and procedures that I wanted to make sure to make you aware of. We have a new term and condition on post-award information disclosure. So awardees have an obligation to inform NSF within 30 days of becoming aware of the failure to disclose any information that should have been provided to us at time of proposal in the current and pending support section. If an organization discovers that a PI or co-PI on an active NSF award failed to disclose the current support or in-kind contribution information in the current and pending support section, the AOR must submit this information within this 30 days. At that point, NSF might consult with the AOR or their designee if necessary and determine the impact of the information on the NSF-funded grant, and where necessary, take the appropriate action. We also have a new term and condition on international collaboration in large facilities. If there are new collaborations with non-U.S. organizations, the awardee, again, is part, if you have a large facility grant, which is part of the MREFC program. The awardee must provide advanced written notification of any potential collaboration with a non-U.S. organization or government in connection with its NSF-funded award scope. The awardee must then await further guidance from NSF before proceeding. It's also necessary to provide existing collaborations with non-U.S. organizations. So that list of existing foreign collaborations needs to be provided to NSF as well. We work, as I said, very closely with the Office of Inspector General, and we've recouped millions of taxpayer dollars through actions on awards given to institutions and small businesses. And we've done this through NSF award suspension, government-wide suspension, NSF award termination, and or debarment from serving as a reviewer, panelist, or consultant, or removal of the PI from the NSF award. We don't like to do this, of course. We don't like to take these administrative actions, but we feel that we need to do this again to be good stewards of taxpayer funding. And this only occurs after significant due process through the OIG investigation, the recommendation of the OIG to NSF on the action to take, and then our communication with the U.S. institution on the action that we do plan to put into place. Well, we've received $6 million. We've recovered that from grants in these administrative action cases. We've had 15 cases so far, again, all due to this undue foreign government interference. There have been 21 institutions of higher education and small businesses involved, and 23 researchers have been involved, unfortunately, in these cases. So our coordination with the White House and intergovernmental activities that I mentioned earlier. There is the Subcommittee on Research Security, and this serves as a great forum for us to coordinate with other funding agencies, as well as with law enforcement and the intelligence community, to make sure that we all understand the issues that we're dealing with and that we could work together to resolve those issues. The actions that the subcommittee has taken so far is we've developed guidance for federal departments and agencies in research security. And this is through something called National Security Presidential Memo 33. It's available online. It clearly delineates the different roles and responsibilities of the different departments and agencies and talks about some things that we need to do, including the need to have good disclosure policies in place, the need to harmonize those policies among funding agencies, and then the need to make sure that we have a good risk assessment process in place. We've also developed recommended practices for universities and other research institutions. And again, this recommended practices document is also online. These are not requirements, but they're recommendations on things that universities and research institutions can do in research security and to protect research integrity. And we're in the process of developing education and outreach materials that highlight examples of risks to research. So harmonizing efforts. We have been working very closely with our sister funding agencies. And so the current and pending support fillable form template has been developed by NSF and shared among other agencies for them to consider adopting it so that we have one format that others can, that all funding agencies could require and that researchers and proposers can use to submit to our funding agencies. We're coordinating on analytical tools and we're exchanging information with other agencies on analytics and tools to better understand the data sets and methods that can help address emerging security challenges and identify risks. And we're working to synthesize information. Something that we're doing through the Research Security Subcommittee is to better define what we mean by research integrity as it relates to science and security in the academic community. And we want to make sure that we clarify any misconceptions of the term. In conclusion, universities and federal agencies should actively encourage international collaboration. Proposers and awardees should disclose the full extent of their activities. and research integrity is essential. I thank you all very much, and I welcome your questions.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome Rebecca Keiser to join us with your video and audio, and Jean Feldman also will join us. Jean is also the head of policy at NSF. And so we're going to go through the questions that you've submitted. We also have some questions, some frequently asked questions that we get in the policy office that we want to bring up, but we'll go through these questions first, and please do. We have some time here to answer your questions. So if you think of anything else, please do put them into the Q&A. So the first one is this week, Congress made a bipartisan effort to increase funding for key research areas in the U.S. as a way of ensuring U.S. excellence. How will this funding be allocated, and what will NSF's role play in this? What will NSF's role be?
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you all. It's a pleasure to be with you. So we're very pleased, of course, that there's bipartisan endorsement of NSF and of basic research investments and the importance of it. As you see in the draft legislation, that was passed on the Senate side now, I can say, there is the endorsement for the creation of a new entity within NSF to focus on particular technology areas that are listed in the bill. I can't comment any further right now on the bill and on allocations because there's still a process going forward. So this is the Senate version of the bill. Of course, we're very excited about it. There's a House version of the NSF authorization that has similar terms in it, but there are some differences. So that House version needs to go through, and then the Senate and House versions need to be conferenced to come to resolution on one unified bill, which hopefully then will be passed and signed into law. So we have a bit of a process to go through before we know more, and we can talk more about allocations or specific terms and conditions. As you can imagine, we are following it very closely, though. And as soon as we can, we'll start the process of talking to members of Congress and their staff after passage to determine compliance and what it really means for NSF. And we'll be sure to communicate that out to you all.
Great. So I noticed in the poll that we have a large number of research administrators here with us today. And this question is from a research administrator asking, are there signs of foreign affiliation that a research administrator can be looking for, particularly in situations where the PI is not aware of their obligation to disclose?
So I think that this is always a big challenge. Something that certainly we do recommend is to have the Office of Sponsored Research check with the conflicts office, because often these types of affiliations were reported, but to the conflicts office, and we just want to make sure that that information is captured. Something to be very clear about is we have two separate sections in the proposal. One is the biosketch, where we capture professional appointments. And if there is an international appointment outside of your US regular appointment, it should be reported there. And then there's the current and pending support section, where any research commitment with a time commitment associated with it should be reported there. So another part of, I think, a way we can all work to capture this is just making sure that the Office of Sponsored Research has a communications path to the proposed PIs so that we make sure that we're all clear about the information that needs to be provided. Jean, is there anything further that you wanted to capture in there?
No, I think that really addresses the question well. I think that there have been many people that have been confused about our appointment section. And over the last year and the last PAP guide, we made it clear that it was institutional, professional, all kinds of appointments. And then we put some parameters outside the organization for the professional appointment piece. But taking a closer look at that language, I think may help you fully understand what we want there versus what you would put in the current and pending support section. But a great question. Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Great. The next question is that grantees have trouble tracking foreign institution gifts and grants to PIs that do not run through their organizations. So they don't have a mechanism to enforce the reporting requirement. So does NSF have any suggestions for this?
Well, I mean, obviously, this has been a challenge because we made it clear in the PAP guide that it's not only things that go through directly to through your organization, but it's things that are directly to the individual. And so ensuring that faculty understand that that includes everything, and that's the expectation of the institution, that they'll be in full compliance with that. Obviously, that's going to be one of the things that our interagency working group is going to address, are what kinds of ways can we be fully compliant with the 2020 version of the National Defense Authorization Act, Section 223B, to make sure that we're all ensuring that there is knowledge of the faculty of what it means to put things on there, or in some cases, not put things on that particular on their particular current and pending support and biosketch. But I mean, we fully understand the challenge there. And I think also one aspect of it that is a little different between NSF and NIH is that they're capturing things related to conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment. NSF's process has that done through the organizational office, usually an outside activities office that collects that information. So there is a little bit of a difference there, but obviously the clarity and communication with your faculty about what the expectations are, and that it's not just things going through the organization, but directly to them, is vitally important. Rebecca, do you have anything to add?
No, that covers it greatly. I just wanted to say that the working group that Jean co-chairs, she co-chairs it with NIH, and there will be other agency representatives on it as well. And this is to focus on disclosure and ways we can better harmonize and standardize disclosure requirements.
And that benefits all of you to the extent that we can. And the end result will be draft templates and formats for use by the agency, understanding that we all have different statutory requirements, so that there may be some small nuances there, but really a great effort, I believe, to really harmonize what the research agencies are requesting in terms of this information.
Okay, the next question is, what format would the AOR use to submit the notification when they've discovered an undisclosed collaboration? And how do they submit that information? Sorry.
Sure, no problem. So it included in the term and condition, it's the term and condition on post-award information disclosure, and it gives direction on how to disclose this information. It's disclosed into research.gov, and we ask for the information that should have been included in current and pending support, as well as the organization's assessment of the impact of that information on the award, on the potential capacity of senior personnel to perform the award, or any overlap or duplication. We then take that in and we review that information, and we'll coordinate back with you depending on what that potential impact may be.
And that is submitted just because it may be hard to find. That is submitted as an other request, and that will enable you to get the information into us. And there were a couple of questions, and I want to make sure there's clarity here. This isn't just your basic update of information that is that you want to provide since the award was made, meaning you provided everything. Is that what you use to update? That is not. What we're trying to capture here is things that really should have been provided at the time of proposal submission. We are also asking, as part of our research performance progress report format, to provide an update since either the proposal was submitted or since submission of your last annual report that actually provides an update of your other support. But that is provided as part of the annual reporting process.
Okay, and that covers one of the questions that we received in advance. It's one of the common questions that we get.
It really is. There's confusion about that. And
Sure.
we hope to provide greater clarity in terms of what our expectations are.
Okay, question here is, are there NSF funding opportunities for researching and reporting on this topic of promoting and protecting the U.S. science and engineering enterprise?
As part of the 2022 President's budget request, we've actually requested $1 million in funding for a research security program. And it would be for exactly what this question is addressing, looking at aspects of research security, helping us better define research integrity, and also looking at potential mitigation factors and ways that we can mitigate the risk from these issues. So, of course, now it's up to Congress to see if they actually appropriate the funding for that, but we are asking for it.
Okay. If an American university has a campus in a foreign country, how does NSF consider this? Does NSF consider this to be a foreign institution?
Jean, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there actually in the PAP guide are special requirements for institutions of higher education. We call them international branch campuses. And actually, it's a little different from this scenario. But what they have to do is provide an explanation of why it can't be done and justify why it can't be done at the U.S. campus. But that's as part of the proposal submission process versus what it is here. But you will note, we ask you, we do understand the implications, and we can't say that they're U.S. or not, because it really depends on the agreement that organization, the institution of higher education has with the foreign entity and what they consider it. And some countries, no matter what the institution of higher education says, they don't consider it a U.S. institution. They consider it part of theirs. So just bear that in mind. But there is special guidance in the eligibility section that addresses international branch campuses.
Okay, next question is, are you aware of monitoring tools to help identify areas where disclosure has not happened appropriately so that grant recipients can find these issues before NSF does?
So I am aware that there are some universities that have such tools or are piloting such tools, and there is a research security roundtable that was set up through Texas A&M called the ASCE, but I can't tell you what that stands for, I'm sorry, where they do share information and best practices like tools like this. I did also want to let you know that we at NSF are piloting analytics tools to help identify these kinds of risks. It's a pilot right now because we do need to go through a Privacy Act notice to make sure that we're transparent about having this tool and how we're going to use it. So we have to go through that process before we're going to utilize it. But if we do start utilizing it, we will share what that tool is and the components of that tool with you all, with the community.
Okay, question here is asking about co-authoring papers with international collaborators. Is that something that needs to be disclosed, even when they don't receive any monetary support for it?
No, it does not, unless the collaborations do not need to be reported in current and pending and support, unless, of course, there is research time being spent at an institution or being funded by an institution outside your home institution. So that's when it does have to be. But the collaboration itself does not need to be reported there. We do have the section, however, of collaborators and other affiliations. And that section is used when we are looking to select reviewers of the proposal to make sure that we avoid any conflicts of interest, right? So it should be reported there. Jean, is there anything else?
No, that appropriately covers.
Okay, the question here is for research in cryptography or any research areas that fall into munitions, is there a process for having research topics checked for export controls by NSF prior to establishing partnerships with foreign organizations?
NSF itself does not check that. We do
No.
have the requirements that organizations themselves do review and are responsible for export control issues and resolve any export control issues prior to, they resolve it themselves, I should say. We do hope, of course, because we do fund basic and fundamental research. So we hope that is minimized, but it is the responsibility of the organization.
Okay. If a PI informally shares sensitive research findings with a foreign entity, is there any way to stop or prevent that from happening?
That's tough, isn't it? And, I think part of the challenge we have overall is what do we all consider sensitive? And how do you define that? So the Jason report on open science and research security very clearly recommended that we use the current system and we don't create new categories. So the current system is that, if something is of concern, it should be export controlled, right? It should be under that regime, and there's a clear list of what's export controlled, or it should be classified, right, and not shared because it's classified. So again, this is all the responsibility of the researcher and the research organization, but certainly that is the system that we go by.
Okay. NIH is now requiring the PI to sign the other support document. Does NSF have any plans to do this or have any other additional certification from the PI beyond the proposal certification?
That is what is encompassed under the 2020 NDAA language. And we will be working on it as part of our task group to try and find harmonization in terms among the research agencies in terms of how we address that particular issue. Yes, we are aware of what NIH has done, and we're looking to do it on a more interagency basis at NSF.
Okay, how should organizations provide previously undisclosed current and pending support information prior to award so that the proposal hasn't been awarded yet, but it's going through the review process?
So the way NSF addresses that issue for the most part is that as not anywhere stated in the PAP guide, but as a best practice, prior to making an award, many program officers throughout the foundation will request an updated current and pending support document prior to making that award. And so that encompasses a piece of it. If they do not ask you, the only time you have to report it is that you consider that to be a significant development that would impact the ability to carry out the research as proposed. And that is in the PAP guide, and you would provide it to the cognizant program officer for their consideration.
Okay, so this question, I'm trying to interpret this one here. It's you have a case of the joint advising of a student at a foreign institution without travel and without funding involved. Would that need to be disclosed as current and pending or some other way?
Well, remember what Rebecca keeps saying over and over again. There are the purposes of current and pending support are to assess the capacity of the individual to carry out the research as proposed, as well as to avoid any overlap duplication with other funded projects. And so there are a lot of things. NSF is getting ready to release, I'm very excited to announce, a new table that is similar to what NIH used and developed, but would literally say major categories of information, where you're required to report it, biosketch, current and pending support, facilities, equipment, and other resources as part of the project report or a post-award notification. And then finally, do not disclose. So what we're really getting at in terms of this is the faculty member going to really be spending time? Typically, we aren't counting graduate students as part of that rubric if it's part of their appointment. But if this is something special and unique that you don't think is addressed, folks, there is never a harm in reporting. The harm is when you don't report it and you think it should have been reported. So on that particular issue, if there really is concern about the capacity or duplication aspects, I would encourage you to report it if you think there is a real issue there. Anything to add, Rebecca?
No, that covers it greatly.
Is NSF considering moving to a just-in-time model for collecting current and pending support and biographical sketch information?
Not at this time. That's not to say that we have not had thorough and really engaging conversations with the directorates on what their perspective would be. Folks don't understand that our review processes between NSF and NIH are actually, we both do peer review, absolutely. But after that, there's some significant differences in our merit review process that would make it very challenging for us. So at this time, that is not being further considered.
Okay. If the PI is part of a startup company in their research field, whether foreign or domestic, should that be listed on their current and pending support?
So my inclination is no. Jean, what are your thoughts on that? Because we're really again looking at research-related support. If your PI is part of a startup company and you've reported that to your home organization, and they're now considering that part of your appointment, then no, I don't think you need to report it. Jean, do you agree?
That's accurate. If it's, we will have a line on the table that talks about a startup company based on organization, licensed intellectual property. That's not, disclosure is not required, but a startup company based on non-organization licensed IP would be included. So stay tuned for more when we actually release the table, hopefully very, very soon.
Okay, how is NSF balancing the call for more open science and protecting U.S. research?
So I've been changing my communication on this point quite a bit, because I used to say, that we had to balance between protection and openness. And really now I think it's more that protection is to protect the openness that we have. Right? We want to make sure that we continue to have open science and that we're allowed to freely, provide data and results when the principal investigator and the members of the team are ready to do so. And research security should make sure that happens. What we're concerned about is when there might be those who take those ideas or take those data before the team is ready to release them. And that's what's concerning to us. So openness is built into the system, and we want to make sure that it's kept that way.
Okay, I want to get one of the questions that we receive quite frequently to the policy office, and this is specific to completing the current and pending support document. So the question is, when completing that current and pending support document in Science CV, which is an option to complete that, the system prevents me from reporting zero effort. Can you explain the reasoning behind this?
Okay, so let's get back to the comment that I just made about the use of current and pending support at NSF. And it's to understand what it is. Is there, all of these things put together, do you have the capacity to carry out the research as proposed? Well, obviously, if there's zero time, that's not an issue. What we are finding, and this is, I'm so happy you brought this one up, Jeremy, because it is what continues to be just a real misunderstanding of how we use information. So in the budget, we're asking you for how much time you are requesting for to be supported by the National Science Foundation. And of course, we have the 2-month rule, et cetera. The difference in current and pending support, however, is irrespective of what you put on that budget, how much time is it going to take you to carry out this project if it were indeed funded? And so we're really interested in current and pending support is time issues that would make it challenging, if not impossible, for that researcher to carry out the research as proposed based on this. And so zero, if there's zero, it's zero, and there isn't an impact. And so therefore, we're not requiring it to be reported. And that's pretty clear in our guidelines.
Okay, next question is, if you run a for-profit company that has intellectual rights to their discoveries, but want to submit a proposal to allow for deeper research, is that under these rules automatically a conflict of interest?
So it is not necessarily. We are very clear. We have the definition of financial conflict of interest in the PAP guide. And we also are clear that it is the responsibility of the home organization to make that determination about conflicts of interest and resolve them. Only if they cannot be resolved does that need to be reported to NSF. So our main advice is to go and consult with your home organization on that question.
Okay, the next question is asking about the new reporting requirement on the RPPR, the Research Performance Progress Report. And it's asking, do research visits that result in travel reimbursement and per diem from foreign institutions need to be reported?
So again, very excited to say that what the way we have addressed travel support is that if it's travel support paid by an external entity to attend a conference or workshop, that is not disclosed. But travel supported or paid by an external entity to perform research activities with an associated time commitment would be reported in current and pending support.
Okay. Next question is, if a foreign university has more advanced technology or research than we have in this country, is it okay for a small business to partner with them? Or what would you recommend on how their more advanced technology be brought to the US?
I think, again, principled international collaboration is essential. And so certainly collaborate. I think what's key, though, in that collaboration is to make sure, number one, that the U.S. entity is very clear about where that international entity gets their funding from, what are they, and who they're affiliated with. That really needs to be clear. Second, it needs to be clear what the benefits are to both sides, this issue of reciprocity. It doesn't have to be equal benefit, but certainly what are you gaining from the collaboration and what is the other, and what are you giving so that the other entity can benefit as well. And third, just making sure that it is of mutual interest and that the interest is there on both sides. So again, if there are any questions about international collaborations, certainly your home organization should be able to respond and make sure that there aren't any conflicts going on here. But we do encourage any type of international collaboration.
Okay, this question is asking about the biosketch, and it says that the current and pending is updated in the RPR, but the biosketch is not.
Not at this time. We do have it under consideration as something else that should be updated. Thank you for raising that issue, because it's absolutely correct. At the present time, it's only as of October 5th, 2020. It was an update of other support information, but we are in the process of discussing inclusion of an update to the particularly the appointment section of the biographical sketch.
Okay, another question that we receive regularly on current and pending support, when you're asked to provide the total award amount on current and pending support, if the award includes funds from multiple investigators at the same institution, does each investigator list the amount of the that's on the award notice, or just the amount for each individual investigator?
The only way we've parsed that is to say, if you are a subawardee, you only put your share, because obviously that's not the full amount of the award. You're only a subset of that award. But if you are the prime and you're all from the prime, you put the full amount of the award. We don't parse it per individual.
Okay, and the last question we have is about pending support, and it says pending support may not be funded if the proposal is not selected by the agency. Is it fair to assume that the labor allocated in the other/pending proposal will interfere with our capability to complete the task in the NSF proposal?
So very often, if it's pending support and should the proposal be selected for award, often the program officer will go back to you and ask you if any of those pending awards are indeed going to be truly awarded. And then take that into consideration for capacity, overlap, and duplication. We know that you're going to list a lot of potential pending awards because, of course, you're going to apply to many different entities for funding. Yes. That is completely understandable and acceptable. And so it's really just a matter of then, the program officer going back and double checking on that. And that is also why, of course, in the RPPRs on an annual basis, we do ask you to update the current support. We don't ask you for pending support in the updates, but for current support.
Okay, I want to thank Rebecca and Jean for joining us today. And tomorrow we'll have 3 more opportunities for sessions. There will be concurrent sessions covering the programs in the Directorate for Biological Sciences and in the Directorate for Geosciences. And then we're going to conclude the day with an opportunity for Q&A on the wide range of proposal and award policy. So we hope you'll join us tomorrow. And I want to thank you all for joining, and please have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.